videos, I felt like if I was going to talk about it, I should watch them. And if I need to watch something, like we did some just between us, we did a little bit of undercover stuff for the Greyhound, Amendment 13 that we did in 2018. We didn't wind up using all of it, but that was easier to watch, as harmful as it was to the dogs. That was a cakewalk compared to this. So this stuff is tough. It's deep and it's just tough. So I want to read a quote from my old boss, and then I'll pull up my PowerPoint because I think it's interesting. But there have been few seminal cases of animals in situations of cruelty of crisis that have touched the American conscience and proved to be a wake-up call. The rescue of stranded pets in the wake of Katrina. You guys are probably too young, but Katrina, and then spoke to the power of the human-animal bond. I mean, you've heard this, right? That people did not want to leave their animals, so they stayed and they all died. Really, really tough stuff. The Michael Vick case reminded people that dogfighting does still happen, and say, well, we need just to thank him for getting caught because he happened to be famous, and what a shine the light right on that awful, awful practice. And for its part, Hallmark, which was the plant in California, that huge undercover investigation, which prompted a lot of the Ag-Gag bills, provided a front row seat into the realities of industrial agriculture. Horrifying. So I just think that draws a neat parallel. Maybe the Katrina one isn't a good one for you guys, but in general, you get the point. So I'll pull up I'll do the screen share if that's okay.
Yeah, and actually Mallory and I both went through Katrina. We're both in Louisiana, so we know too.
Oh, you do know, wow.
We had a ton of animals. We actually had horses too, that we had to leave out on the levees because we didn't have anything else to do. We didn't think it was going to be that bad. And we had left them at the stables, but we had some people that had horses there too, and they just let them all out. But we were able to get them back there. We have a magazine that they had taken pictures after Katrina, and our horses are on the front cover of it, which is crazy. But
that's great.
It was a wild time for sure.
All right. Oh my God, I can't even imagine being there. I mean, I went over to help, of course, but didn't live there. And we learned a lot about people and animals. And if we weren't sure, we learned a lot in 2018 here in Florida with the Greyhound Amendment, that huge number of people were like, oh yeah, this isn't good. Let's get rid of this. I mean, that really blew a lot of people's minds because, it's a bad industry, but then the 69.2% of the votes was a big one. So I will see if I can screen share, and then I'll pull up. Yes, and there we go. All right, so I can't see the chat if you guys have something, but that's okay. I don't know that many slides, but some are really interesting, I think. Is this okay? Can you guys see it okay? Yep.
Yep.
Okay. So yes, and I work for the Humane Society of the United States, and I should say that I'm the Florida State Director, so I really just work in Florida. However, the organization I work for, we're actually all over the world, but certainly all over the United States. And this is a growing issue in our country and others, but we haven't had it here in several years. But we'll talk about that in a minute. So our general statement is just it shows how much Big Ag has to hide. The expression, if there were windows on slaughterhouses, nobody would eat meat. I mean, it's pretty true. It's totally true. But industry that does anything to keep Americans in the dark. And it's you've got like three aspects. One, that there's the constitutional issues that we'll talk about, and then safety, health, and then just the humane issue, which for us is, of course, top of the list. These laws or bills or efforts to pass a law that ban videos or photos of factory farms or any kind of animal industry, animal facility without permission from the owner. And some bills have even said, oh, you have to get written permission. I mean, that's absurd. Making it a crime for an undercover investigator to get work at a factory farm. And this is an interesting point, requiring that any violations be immediately reported. So, but a lot of the cases, they have to prove a pattern. And so that just kind of nullifies it. Say, oh, quick report, that's what's best for everybody. We want to get to the bottom of these things and have them corrected because we're really noble. And it's, garbage. It's just to weaken the case. So then, yeah, I mean, it's not just animals, but other whistleblowers. That's important for so many issues of employees and with the children's sweatshops. I mean, you guys probably don't even know what the term is, but child labor. Of course, you know what that is. But the book, in a lot of the research, and even in talking with a couple of my colleagues, the book The Jungle, which was way back when, 1906, but that was one of the first that this author wrote about the horrors of the Chicago meat industry, which led to some federal bills. And that certainly was an eye-opener to people at the time. It's an eye-opener for people now. Can you imagine what people in 1906 were thinking? But good for that person. And this book comes up a lot, and I have not read it, but I'm interested now in reading it because it was obviously an important part of the beginning of this process. I love these quotes. I just do. San Francisco Chronicle, package of bills from agribusiness, the worst PR gaffe since New Coke. Do you guys remember New Coke? Okay. The meat industry consultant. Okay, who here, do you guys know Temple Grandin? She is fantastic. No one knows. Okay, Temple Grandin is an incredible woman. She's mild, she's autistic, mild, I'm not using the right language, but she's on the spectrum, but on the low end of the spectrum. And she talks about it. I mean, she's very open about being autistic, very smart, and she cares about animals, and she feels this sensitivity that you wouldn't be here if you didn't have that same sensitivity. I know I do. And she works with the ag industry, which sounds odd, but to make it more humane. And she has changed the industry. The squeeze machine, there was an HBO special about her. I mean, she's quite famous. I mean, I would give my right arm to meet this woman. That tells you something. And she's an older lady, and I've heard she's odd as can be. And that would make sense, but we love the work she does, and I have huge respect for her, really huge respect. And so she says that this is the stupidest thing that ag ever did, which is true. Just cover it up, hide it. That's not okay. People don't go for that. The National Pork Producers Council said we did a study and coverage of the Ag-Gag laws. 99% of the stories were negative. Go figure. So why are they still happening? And they have been in recent years, and they are still happening. We'll talk about that here. Okay, this is a lot, but basically, what do they have to hide? A lot. So here's a case from Vermont, and this is calves at a Vermont slaughter plant. This is tough. Videotape. So the undercover investigation was done by the HSUS. Dairy calves were only a few days old, many with their umbilical cords still hanging from their bodies. They were unable to stand, and they were kicked and beaten from the staff members. They were shocked with electrical prods and more. And Temple Grandin had some comments there, not positive. This was in Grand Isle, Vermont. Failure to ensure that the stunned calves had been rendered insensible to pain. Undercover video shows movements and breathing that is not characteristic of post-mortem reflexes. A shackled calf whose head had been halfway removed vocalized at one point when he should have been unconscious. And just horrible, really unbelievable horror. And this is, we all know dairy is one of the worst, absolutely one of the worst. When dairy cows give birth to male calves, they're often sold to veal factories where they're unable to turn around. They're kept in veal crates, and they don't live very long at all, but it's very cruel. And so this was a little while back. This was a big one of the first in 2009 at the Vermont slaughter plant, which came from the dairy industry. So it's that's one thing they have to hide. I mean, that's why they do this. So when we really caused these laws, right? This Ag-Gag because of these investigations, which I'm really proud that the HSUS and many others, Mercy for Animals and several others, COK, Compassion Over Killing, have done a lot of this work. So here's another one. Now this is the Hallmark investigation was in 2018, and that was in Chino, California. And this was probably the biggest in the world. And it led to some legislation to follow. But these cows were so sick, they couldn't move. Are you guys familiar with this one, Hallmark? I'll never forget the name because the name Hallmark. Truly, it was really hard. The amount of videos, people who viewed this, honestly, if I would see it and say, oh, that's really awful. But unless I needed to, I don't know that I would watch it. I have, of course, but it's difficult to watch. But they move them with, you can see the machines in the back where the forklift slides under them and turns them over because they were so sick. They should not be certainly in the food chain. And this was headed for a school lunch program, which led to lawsuits later. It's really, really horrible the way that these animals were treated. And it led to, again, several lawsuits down the road, but stemming from this Hallmark case in 2018 in California. And then Prop 2 passed in California, and then Prop 12 in California passed in 2018, the same time as the Greyhound Amendment. So if you're the agribusiness and you don't care about animal welfare, of course, we're really a thorn in their side, and that's a wonderful thing to be. But these investigations have led to the Ag-Gag bills. The Wyoming, this one is tough. I just sort of won't go into too much detail on the Wyoming, but you can see here, it was a kind of a feeder to Tyson Foods. This is tough. They kicked and punched mother pigs, and they actually threw the piglets' testicles at each other, and then fed them to the mothers. Pregnant pigs with rectal and uterine prolapses were refused proper treatment. This one is tough. The pigs died in their gestation crates and were left there for days. I mean, imagine these undercover investigators. I just cannot imagine the bravery and the strength they must have. It's tough. One dying pig, barely able to move, was desperately trying to inch her way to the water, and the only hydration came from the mercy from our investigator. And so can you imagine the public seeing this? They're horrified. So again, that's what prompted some of these bills that we'll talk about next. And the coalition members. And this has helped in our efforts to kill the bills. All these different groups, a lot of the legal organizations, which I figured would be the most interesting to you guys. I do have there's some interesting groups. The Center for Constitutional Rights, Association of Prosecuting Attorneys, of course, all the animal groups, all the environmental groups, that goes without saying, Consumer Federation of America, Equal Justice, of course, Center for Justice and Democracy, the Farm Worker Support Committee, National Press Photographers Association, National Employment Law Project, on and on, a National Young Farmers Coalition. That's interesting, right? So all these different groups, this is just kind of a generic, different categories that we work with in so many states to kill these bills. And they are still happening. There was one that just, West Virginia, well, I'll talk about that in a minute, that did pass a similar one this year, but we made it better. So that's something positive. But these are our partners. Of course, the animal and the environmental groups are kind of an obvious one. So more than 30 have been defeated across the country in the past 5 years. I was blown away when I researched it, and they had they have been tried in so many states, more than I even realized. Vermont and New York, I wouldn't have expected. 3 states have them on the books: Alabama, Arkansas, and Missouri. And I think this part will be interesting to you guys. Some would consider Montana, North Dakota, and Iowa to also be Ag-Gag states. The Ag-Gag laws that had passed in Idaho, Utah, Iowa, Kansas, and North Carolina were struck down by federal judges in the years to follow, 15, 17, 19, and 20. So this year, as a violation of the First Amendment. That's very interesting. And it makes sense. I have another slide in here that talks about the arguments. But if that's if you're just hiding it, it's freedom of speech, freedom of the press. And that's a big one. They talk about the journalists that they don't want to let into their facility. Yeah. On the Iowa one, or the North Dakota, why are they considered Ag-Gag bills, but they're not exactly? Is there really just a stiffening of the penalty for trespass? Because essentially, if you say, well, no trespassing, well, that's already illegal. I can't go trespassing and breaking and entering and stealing your stuff. That's already against the law. But this it makes it stronger, so they're not exactly Ag-Gag. Some get watered down, but some consider it to be Ag-Gag. But that's not too bad with 3 main states with current laws on the books. Again, they're still trying, and they're trying to come at it in different angles, like the one in West Virginia. So again, so Tennessee, yeah, this is a great story. In 2013, it was a huge fight. It was massive. And the bill in Tennessee passed the legislature. And my friend is the Tennessee state director, and it got to the governor's desk. And everyone, I mean, the whole animal welfare movement and the environmental movement, I mean, it went crazy. And we actually got the governor to veto it, which is unheard of, really unheard of, especially in Tennessee, a very red, conservative farming state, you know, ag state. That was huge. So then there they go again the next year, 2014 and 15. There were bills. And there was also one this past session, although it didn't get very far. Defeated in Indiana. I mean, I just listed a few. Indiana, they keep trying, but Kentucky, Minnesota, Idaho, California, I was just really surprised to see all of those states where they were attempted. And now this is an interesting point that that this was tried and this attempted in Florida, and I was here and I remember it, and it made it to the Senate floor. And Senator Norman, he sponsored. He also had a dog bill, so I remember we were kind of torn. But interesting that he said he was asked to do this by Wilton Simpson, who's this big ag guy from Pasco County. Is it Pasco? Yeah, it's Pasco. Now Wilton Simpson is the Senate president. He wasn't the Senate president then, he was just a big ag guy. So that's a concern, right? I mean, it's a big one. It's a big concern. The argument that animal rights groups, they take this information and they make it look a certain way. Meanwhile, if it's film, I mean, come on. But they exaggerate it, and they're just doing this to get in, and they want everyone to be vegan. But it really, and the argument is, whether exaggerated or not, it makes no difference. It's really a matter of freedom of speech and freedom of press. And part of the argument that my friend used in Tennessee was the nursing home example. If you were to make this illegal and pass this is part of the reason why he vetoed it, and pass this, how does this differ from someone going in and seeing their loved one in harm's way in a nursing home, and right, calling, you know, shining the light on it, like, this is not okay. If that were your family member or whatever, or how about in a school or a daycare? I mean, like, there's this, or any other business, it's just shining the light on. And this isn't one of the arguments the industry used. Well, what if I just started doing that into your home? Well, that's different. This is where the whole staff is there. This is in the Hallmark case, there were 6 USDA officers there, which is mind-boggling. But this is not a home. This is a business where they are telling people this is how they're supposed to be doing it. They're following the law, and they're not. And not to mention the fact that it was going, sick cows, that meat was going to school children. Pretty scary. So that's part of the argument. And if the humane argument isn't as compelling, but it's the constitutional argument is obviously stronger. And you guys know that. Neat map I just wanted to show that, I mean, and it's changing. So because some of these laws, so the one in West Virginia that my friend told me about, he said they started out as a full-on Ag-Gag bill, and then they changed it. And they said, okay, we're just kind of eco-terrorism is what, you know, they called it. They've got a group that was in California that just comes and lets all the animals out. And it's really a radical group. And we don't support that because we can't. And, you know, we say, no, you gotta follow the law. But they amended that bill. And so it's really just a heightened, strengthened of the trespassing and kind of the eco-terrorism. You can't go in and just let people out, I mean, let the animals out or steal their records and such. And we supported that in West Virginia, and it did pass, but it's not an Ag-Gag bill. So some are in the gray area. That's kind of where I'm going with that. But this is a good little map. It's nice to see, but they're still trying. The fact that one just was overthrown in 2020 is compelling. So a poll done by the A found that 64% of people oppose them, and that 50%, we would probably be in the 50%, strongly opposed. You know, and it doesn't matter your background, your age, whatever. People don't think this is okay. And also, people also don't want to see it. So getting them to see it and pay attention is a challenge, but once you do, they're horrified. I can think, but most of the people I know, certainly all the people I like, would be with us on this. They'd be horrified. It's just common sense. I mean, look at this sweet face. And to think of, you know, some of the horrors that go on, that'll make you vegan in a hurry. But we're a Big Ten organization. We don't judge. Most of my family members eat meat. I just ask that they, eat meat that was raised humanely. I would like for them to not eat meat, but they didn't really ask for my opinion on that. They know my opinion. Let's go there. But encouragement is positive and nice, and we never judge. We have all sorts of supporters, and if someone's helping animals, that's a great thing. We just hope to bring them along in their journey to help more animals. And they're tough to watch. One is the horse soaring one. So again, these laws, the reason they're so damaging, well, number one, they're unconstitutional, and we've known that. There's only 3 left, and you saw the map. I mean, they've been tried in like almost every state, and only 3 remain. The rest have been struck down, and then they have to defend them and all that. But the reason they're so harmful is it's for our movement is in the puppy mills, which is a big one for Florida. The horse barn for the soaring and the either racing or showing, and the Tennessee walking horses, even in the primate facility. There's another video on primate facility, and then obviously the animals raised for food. It would really stop us in our tracks, and we need these to really raise awareness. And they're just not. It would be a huge deterrent, which is why we fight them, and so does every other animal organization really fights them, and all the other groups that don't even care about animals. They care about workers, safety of the workers, and other reasons in the environmental aspect, which is a big one. But I do encourage you to watch them, or at least start to watch them. Maybe leave the sound off if you want, but it's tough. But I would try it just for a little bit. I figure if these poor creatures had to endure this, the least I can do is watch it for 10 seconds or before I have to change it, because I'm with you. It's difficult. So we can kind of skim through these, but if the Ag-Gag laws were in place, none of these investigations they would have happened, or maybe not, but they would have been illegal. They would have been criminal. They wouldn't certainly not have gotten the traction, and that person probably would have been in jail. But in 2014, on the expose in Kentucky, after 900 piglets died from a disease in a 2-day period, the animals' intestines were ground up and fed back to their mothers. How about that? That's nice. And it's apparently prohibited by state law in Kentucky. So, and maybe it's in other states as well, but that was, I do remember that. I actually do remember that. But none of these would have happened. So we need to keep fighting these Ag-Gag laws. They're awful. And our whole farm animal protection team is fabulous. And they work on these all the time. They know them inside and out. And they, if it ever comes back to Florida, I don't think it would fly in Florida, but now I'm concerned. I knew President Simpson was not a friend to animals. His chief of staff is a great lady, and I'm friendly with her, and she loves animals, which is great. But it's well known he's not, he's a little hostile to the animal folks. And now that I know he was the reason for the Ag-Gag bill in 2012, is a little concerning. And there's some good things here I actually would like to review with you guys. Most of these but stay informed about legislation in your state. If a bill did come, we would need to jump on it quickly. And then your state legislators, I say this every time, and I mean it though. If your home address is your permanent address, or if it's here, whichever one, or in which you graduate from law school, maybe you'll move to a different state, but wherever you wind up, you can use me as a resource always, but find out what's happening. Find your state director, even if it's just helping spread the word. Or if you're in Florida, stay in touch with me. But we always need advocacy. And now with Zoom calls, it's even easier. So if you're a legislator, after November 3rd, we'll know who's there. Some are still there. Not everybody's up for election. Most are. But then as for a Zoom call, getting them to agree to a Zoom call is almost easier than getting them to agree in person. So, okay, Zoom call. You say, hey, this is an issue. And again, puppy mills is our biggest issue because Florida has so many puppy stores, and they, come in from out of state and they bring diseases, and it's just, we're supporting the cruelty of puppy mills. So that's our biggest legislative priority, which does fit right in with this, because if in Ohio, if they had an Ag-Gag, or one of the other states, Pennsylvania, where a lot of the breeding happens, that would, be a deterrent for our investigations on puppy mills.
Kate, I'm going to jump in really quick. Everybody who's on this call right now, we actually, as ALDF, as our student chapter, are going to plan on having meetings with legislators jointly as a student organization to talk about, if any legislation regarding animals does come up this session. So just be on the lookout for that, because we do plan on, since it's Zoom Nation right now, to take advantage of that. So just keep that on your radar. And we also just have about a minute left. I don't know if anybody has a question. If not, I have a very quick question. How does this play into Florida's Right to Farm Act? I know that we have a Right to Farm Act, but does that more so go against like practices with fertilizers and stuff, or?
Yeah, Right to Farm doesn't come up in Florida.
Okay.
It's only, I heard it referenced many, many years ago, but I haven't heard it referenced in the legislature in a long, long, long time.
Okay.
We're not a big ag state. You remember when the gestation crate passed in 2004, it was like 2 guys were, pig farmers. Okay. So it's good to keep an eye on, but it doesn't come up in our work here in Florida, because Florida is a little weird. In other states, that same law would be a factor, but not so much in Florida. It's a good, and I want to get back to something else you said. That's great. We work so closely with ALDF. I'm thrilled that you're going to meet with your legislators. That's wonderful. And we do have animal laws. bills that are going to be up this session, like females and the sexual abuse.
What we'll do is we'll reach out to you first, kind of to get talking points as an organization, and then we'll get as many students as we can on a Zoom call and kind of do that.
That's I love that. That's a great idea. It's a great idea. So I know we're done. I just want to put up my colleagues' information. I guess I should put mine up. I assume you have it. Will you put my email in the chat? If anybody wants it, of course. And Chris Holbein is a good soul, and he works on this. And my Lane and Green Meatless Mondays ordinances resolutions promote Meatless Mondays. Those are great in cities. They're passing, in a lot of different places. And that's the ordinance and resolutions. And then I just like to show this picture, because why do we love one and eat another? We should love them both. Isn't that the best picture? That's like my favorite part.
It is. Does anybody have any quick questions? Otherwise, thank you so much, Kate, for taking the time to do this. We're going to have events the whole rest of the week. Some grueling topics, some fun topics, but everybody.
What are you having?
Tomorrow we are going to do the cruelty-free products, and Sunny's going to talk with us Friday, and Lexi, we're here. We're going to kind of share what's in our fridge and talk about our favorites, and then Sunny's going to do a presentation on the best meat alternatives and dairy alternatives.
Great.
Yeah.
Rocking. Yay.
So promote us, Kate. Promote us around too. So if anybody wants to join our Zooms, everyone's welcome. Doesn't have to just be students. So
it doesn't?
Nope, not this round, not this semester. We're
trying to send me something, and I can put that on the Florida HSUS Facebook page.
Yep, absolutely.
Send me something and I'll do it. Okay, great. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you all for coming.
Okay.
Okay, bye, Kate. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.